ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader. As we brace ourselves for potential blackouts this winter, another energy company is making huge profits. BP's profits have more than doubled over the past quarter, going from £2.9 billion to £7.1 billion. It's mainly down to the surge in oil and gas prices due to the ongoing energy crisis, ultimately resulting in huge gains for big energy companies. This comes after the boss of National Grid has been warning about the possibility of blackouts this winter, and people await the tough decisions the Prime Minister told us all to prepare for as they look to plug the fiscal black hole. David Bond is the Evening Standard's deputy political editor.
Well, so BP became the latest of the big energy giants to report their latest profits. It's for the third quarter, which runs to the 3 months to the end of September. And they posted profits of just over £7 billion for that period. That was slightly ahead of what the market expected, slightly better. And of course, like we saw with Shell last week, this is mostly down to the unprecedented rise we've seen in gas and oil prices, particularly in gas, which of course has been caused in part by the war in Ukraine and the crunch on European gas supplies that has caused.
This announcement comes amid the ongoing cost of living crisis. What's the reaction been like to this news?
Well, somewhat predictably, it's just renewed the pressure on the government to look again at the length of time that it has introduced this windfall tax for. So if you go back to earlier in the year, Rishi Sunak, then when he was Chancellor, not Prime Minister, introduced what was called a energy levy on the North Sea oil and gas producers of 25%. Up to 2025. So that's on top of the 40% of tax that they were already paying, taking their tax to 65%. So very, very heavy tax rate. But the justification being that they were making excessive profits because of this unprecedented rise in gas prices. And that had followed a long sustained period of pressure. Now, given where we are with the economy and a black hole in the public finances of somewhere between 30 and 40 billion pounds. It's hard to be precise until we see the Office for Budget Responsibilities forecasts, which will come later this month. The government, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and Rishi Sunak, now Prime Minister, under a lot of pressure to look again at the windfall tax and whether it should be extended in duration, so perhaps another 2 or 3 years, and whether more companies, more energy producers should be pulled into that, because a lot of the energy companies that are not sort of pure oil and gas companies like Shell or BP, nevertheless charge for electricity in a way which is related to the wholesale gas price, which of course has gone up. So that means that they're making excessive profits as well. So they could come into the spotlight as well. So we're now hearing lots and lots more calls. The Treasury themselves are saying that they are considering extending the windfall tax. I don't think it's any great secret that they're looking at it along with a range of other tax raising measures to try and fill that black hole.
The energy crisis is set to continue for the foreseeable. Will these big energy companies just keep continuing to profit?
I think they probably will. I mean, there's no sign at the moment of the gas price is interesting because, of course, at the moment it's very warm in Europe. So, there is a hope that as long as people can keep their gas, their central heating off, then they may be able to keep their bills down. But in terms of the wholesale gas price, which of course feeds through to the profits for companies like BP and Shell, that's still very high. So one imagines that the profits will continue to roll in for some time yet.
There are warnings that blackouts could be on the way this winter. Tell us about that.
So we've been hearing for a while now that we should prepare ourselves for blackouts. We should go out and buy candles and just be prepared. But this follows comments from the boss of the National Grid, who was very keen not to, sort of panic people. But nevertheless, it seems to be a sensible thing to do when there could be if we get a very cold winter. And I saw this morning there were reports that we might get a very cold winter, even though it's been a mild start to the autumn, in which case, energy supplies, gas supplies will come under intense pressure. So there is a possibility that we could be seeing that further down the line. But National Grid very keen to emphasize this morning that people shouldn't panic. People shouldn't necessarily rush out and buy this stuff, but it was just sensible to be prepared.
Let's go to the ads. Stay there to hear more about the rumours of what to expect in the autumn budget. Whilst you're here, why not give The Leader a rate and follow? Welcome back. David, we're facing potential tax rises in the autumn statement. What do we know so far?
Well, very interesting. The Treasury yesterday really rolling the pitch for potential tax rises. It's remarkable when you think about it, Rochelle, that in a space of a couple of weeks, we've gone from slashing taxes to raising taxes. It's quite a thing to get your head round. But that's just the speed of change and the extent of the crisis that we've really been through. And yesterday, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak held a meeting where they discussed a range of options looking ahead to this autumn statement, which is coming up on November the 17th. And they were very keen, the Treasury, to get out the message that, although, the broadest shoulders will bear the biggest burden in any new tax rises that might come in, everybody will feel the pain as they try and find a way of filling this black hole. The message was very clear that this black hole will not be filled alone by reducing government spending. There will need to be tax rises coming down the track, and that everyone will feel the pain on that. So I think some very interesting that they've chosen to get that message out there and get that message out there early ahead of the autumn statement. Any rumours of what else to expect in the autumn statement? There's lots of speculation about what might be in it. Of course, the government are not confirming that, but we talked about the windfall tax and potentially that being expanded and extended. There is talk about continuing the freeze on thresholds for income tax, which is seen as a bit of a stealth tax because as people's wages rise, along with inflation, that pulls more people into paying income tax and higher rates of income tax. So that is also being looked at. But I think the message from the Treasury is that nothing is off the table. They are looking at everything in the round, everything anew, because of the state of the public finances. People will be listening to this and worried about how this is all going to impact them, especially given the cost of living crisis we're already going through. Are we expecting there to be any help announced? Well, Rishi Sunak made it clear when he took over, and it is only just last week, we should remember, that he would help the most vulnerable, that his conservatism would be a compassionate conservatism. And so, again, the message which keeps coming out from both the Prime Minister and Number 10, but also the Treasury, is that he will look to help those. And look, they say, at what he did during the COVID pandemic when people needed support. He was there, and the government spent £400 billion during the pandemic on furlough support, help for businesses and so on. So I think there will be support. They're, of course, not saying that at the moment. I mean, the big worry, of course, is mortgages for lots of Londoners because obviously property prices being higher, mortgages in terms of the amount of capital that people have are higher, and interest rates will go up later this week. We don't know by how much, but the expectation is that the Bank of England will raise rates by 0.75 percentage points on Thursday. That will add hundreds of pounds instantly to those people who are on tracker or standard variable mortgages. For those on fixed deals, they might be protected for now, but coming down the track as interest rates keep going up, as the Bank of England tries to tackle inflation, that is going to add to this cost of living crisis you mentioned, which is already being felt through higher energy bills and now, of course, the potential for tax rises. Now, it wasn't that long ago we had Kwasi Kwarteng's infamous mini budget. The autumn statement will be Rishi Sunak's and Jeremy Hunt's first big test when it comes to the economy. How are we expecting this to be different? Well, I think that the phrase which is being uttered in Westminster a lot at the moment is the dullness dividend. So whereas the Kwasi Kwarteng budget was shock and awe and led to, this real financial crisis, this crisis in the financial markets, interest rates rising and so on, the objective of Sunak and Hunt is very much to calm everything down, send the message that, they are going to be fiscally conservative. They are going to make sure that the debt levels start to fall over the next 5 years in relation to GDP, and that they are not going to borrow money to make the situation worse. And so I think, dull is the watchword. Now, whether once we see those OBR forecasts and we get a real sense of how bad the state of the economy is, the public finances are, what sort of recession we're in for, then, I don't think anyone should underestimate the severity of the crisis that we face and the pinch that's coming down the track. I mean, it's already pretty bad, but I think it's going to potentially get a lot worse. And I think what they're trying to do, Sunak and Hunt, is they keep saying they want to be honest with people about the extent of the problems which are coming. And I think in that sense, people are already starting to get their head around that. So I think the sort of possibility for more shocks and crises will be reduced, but I don't think that will in any way reduce the blow of what we hear later this month.
And that's it from The Leader. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.